Hi, I'm Ryan Davis,
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
and this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm so great because I'm going to sit at the feet of the master this week. You are talking about Mexico City.
Mexico City, a city that I know pretty well.
Yeah, and that's why you speak the language, as you've proven. You've really wrapped yourself in the Mexican culture.
This is true. And I'm going to talk about my 12 favorite things in Mexico City that are not like the top 4 things you're going to see on Yelp. So
No, it's
yeah.
3 times that.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to go deep too. I'm trying to take you deep in to Mexico City. And
Now,
yeah,
how do you say 12 in Spanish?
dulce.
Oh, damn it. I was really hoping to catch you out. Okay, Dose. All right. What number do you not know? Do you know 70?
70 would be siete, something like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
setenta.
Is it really setenta?
Yep.
That's-
Setenta.
That's not good.
Yep.
I don't like that.
That's fine. So you're gonna introduce us to the 12 hidden gems of Mexico City, according to frequent Mexico City visitor Ryan J. Davis.
Exactly. All dulce of those we're going to talk about, and hopefully some of them will be new to even somebody like yourself. So
When you say it, it sounds like do-si-do or something. Do-si? Do-si?
I am from south of the Mason-Dixon line, so I do have a little bit of a southern drawl. I can't help it.
Always.
The 18 years in Brooklyn hasn't changed me. So, Kieran, before we take off and head to Mexico City, we have a piece of listener mail that baffled us when we received it this week.
So this is our first official listener mail. Came in to the mailbox. Now, what is the address, Ryan?
It's out of office at gmail.com.
Nope. Nope. That's not what it is.
Okay.
It's out of office pod at gmail.com.
Out of office pod at gmail.com.
Yep.
Which is a great email address, very original. So we got something this week from a gentleman named Matt Levine.
And I think we were both really excited because neither of us know a Matt Levine. So
We
we
do
said,
not.
this is a new listener, undiscovered listener. This isn't family and friends. This thing is blowing up.
Yeah, we've got the Levines emailing us out of the blue. So we didn't understand the email. That was sort of what was most baffling about it, because it mentions a character from a TV show that we don't think we've ever even mentioned on the podcast.
No, so I think okay. So the subject line is Chris Finch, bloody good rep,
Right.
And so I was thinking maybe this is like a historic house we don't know about, or
The Finch house. It sounds like a house, right?
Absolutely, I'd go to the Finch house. I'm
Yeah.
sure if we looked, there's probably a million Finch
Yeah.
houses. And then it says, "Nice podcast, fellas." Great start. That felt really good when I read that.
Definitely.
Here's some idea for content. An entire episode on Finchy. I truly believe he's the most underappreciated character in the show. He's such a great villain. Just go through all his lines he's ever said, and you'll be in tears.
So wait, so when I was reading this, my first thought was, oh, this is somebody on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the dramatic series that we discussed.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And I was like, oh,
Absolutely.
this is a fan of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Of course, they're reaching out to tell us more about it.
Yeah, and from time to time, we talk about TV shows from time to time, but a villain named Chris Finch didn't ring a bell. Then it said, if you look up Chris Finch on Google, you can't find any quotes. You won't find any good videos. He's just never talked about. I'd love to hear some of his best lines in a pod, as well as you guys dissecting why he's such an important character. Cheers, Matt. So first, we looked up the name Matt Levine. I was interested. I was excited at who I thought it might be, which is an actual media influencer, Matt Levine, a columnist at Bloomberg.
Right, but we don't have any reason to think it's that Matt
No.
Levine. In
No,
fact,
but-
I don't think this person exists. That's my
But
current...
wouldn't it be great if it was that Matt Levine?
Yeah, well, it would be great. Yeah, absolutely. And but I tend to think that this email is actually from the actor who portrays Chris Finch in The Office. That is my guess.
Now, as is acknowledged in the email, if you Google Chris Finch, hard to find what TV show this is about.
Right. It doesn't. It's not a character that I knew off the top of my head. Obviously, it's
No.
not any a household name. Chris Finch is not.
No, I know, Finch is the name, of the protagonist of, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying,
Right.
a
And
personal favorite, in fact.
if someone had emailed us with Broadway musical
Oh,
ideas, that would totally make sense because
are
that's
you kidding?
yeah.
I'd be in the middle of So Happy to Keep His Dinner Warm right now. Do you know it?
I saw the Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too
Yeah,
with John
yeah,
Larroquette.
yeah. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was fun.
this isn't last stop. Let's not go down that road. So we finally found out this is a character from the BBC version of The Office.
Right. A minor character from the
Super
BBC.
minor,
Yeah.
rarely seen. Understandable why it's not on the internet. But Ryan, did we ever talk about The Office on this podcast?
So I don't think that we've ever discussed The Office on this podcast. I
No,
cannot
I was
think
going
of it.
through. We've both watched the British version at some point, right?
We have, yeah,
and I've watched the
absolutely.
American version.
Yes.
But I don't think we've ever talked about it. But then, like a bolt of lightning, I figured it out. I know exactly why Matt Levine was emailing us at outofofficepod@gmail.com. He must have got us confused with some pod that just talks about episodes of The Office.
Yeah, which is now that they don't even make The Office anymore, that's pretty. You're pretty
No.
fandom. You're pretty in.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm kind of surprised if somebody's out there doing a podcast all about the BBC Office. Why haven't they talked about Chris Finch? I agree. This sounds like a great episode.
And Chris Finch is portrayed by a gentleman named Ralph Ensign, who I still believe is Matt Levine. So what I think happened here is somebody said, "I'm going to email every podcast I can find with the word office in it, so we can get
And
Chris
some
Finch
of,
some
one,
publicity."
one of them is surely going to be about The Office.
Yeah, well, and one of them has to be because how many office related podcasts are not about The Office? And we found a handful of pods that would be appropriate. There's one called The American Workplace, which is a pod about The Office. I've never listened to it, but it looks nice.
Yeah, so that might be a good person for Matt Levine to email.
reach out to.
Actually, yeah, you should reach out to them, Matt Levine.
So we're not actually going to have a conversation about why Chris Finch is an underappreciated character in The Office because you and I don't really know.
No, and from the quotes he's included in this email, he seems like a very vulgar character. He works a little blue, a little more than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I don't think that we can say this stuff.
I mean, if you want to try your hand at one of these, I know I'm not saying one of these because I'd have to go to confession and I'm busy this Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to. But if you want to check out Chris Finch in The Office, apparently episode 3 is his sort of best episode.
Yeah, no, famously. And if you have a podcast about The Office, please do an episode on Chris Finch, and please email Matt Levine. However, Ryan, I do think that this highlights an important issue, which is we want our listeners to be emailing us.
Absolutely. We would prefer if they emailed us things that were relevant to what we discuss here in the podcast, but just to email us with random television characters you'd like us to cover, why not?
Yeah, I don't know. Throw it in the mailbag. Let's see if we pick it out.
I Googled around to see if Chris Finch, the character, ever went on a vacation that we could even kind of make it.
We could pivot.
Yeah, but I couldn't find anything.
That's the kind of work that you're willing to do. I really admire that you even tried.
Yeah, I wanted to satisfy our pretend listener, Matt Levine.
I think it's Levine. So again, the address is outofofficepod@gmail.com. Send us your travel questions, comments that you have on things we've said. Send us recalculatings, and we will talk about those on future episodes. Do we want content ideas? If you want to send us episodes ideas, we'll read them. We're not gonna sign in blood that we're actually gonna take them to air. If you think this is as easy as it sounds, you are wrong. That's why you don't have a travel podcast.
And look, we get a lot of emails, so we can't reply personally to everyone.
Well, I think I admitted right at the start this is the one and only email we've ever received, but we certainly won't be responding.
I'm actually going to send him this email, and say, look, we discussed your topic on the pod. Check it out. So,
Absolutely. I think
yeah,
Chris Finch, a highly underrated character. Ryan, if nothing else on this, I think it's time to take off
let's take off and head to CDMX. Flight
down
attendants.
old Mexico way.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right. So today we are talking about Ryan's sort of like hidden Mexico City itinerary. Ryan, you do go there like all the time.
Yeah, I've been there a lot of times. I have friends there. I travel with friends there, so I do get there pretty often.
How many times a year you think?
Like 4 times a year.
And each time for a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, as long as I can get away. I mean, once you're there, it's very much like it's almost like in the New York City time zone anyway. The internet is the same, so I can like work from there. It's very relaxed.
Where do you stay when you go?
I typically stay at like a solid like B hotel or an Airbnb.
Okay.
Yeah, so I stay in like this one of the center districts, and this time, most recently, I stayed near Zona Rosa, which we'll talk about, which is the pink zone, which is one of the gay districts.
And what draws you there? Why not other cities in Mexico, other cities in Central South America?
Well, I think that Mexico City has, it's got everything that a big city needs to have. It's got fantastic food. It's got arts and culture. It's got nightlife. It's beautiful. It's great to walk around in. And in when you live in North America, if there are just not that many other cities that match that definition. I'm not going to go to Chicago all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. In that way, it is very much like New York City, where it feels very dynamic. There's always new things to check out and do. It's got the restaurant scene kind of turns over in the same way that New York often turns over. And I remember, so I've been one time, and I do remember being very struck by what a wonderful museum city it is. I think it is underrated for that.
Yeah, there's a ton of great museums. We're going to talk about a few of them today, but we're not even going to talk about any of the massive ones, which are also fantastic.
That's right, because this is the hidden Ryan Davis guide to Mexico City. So how do you want to break this down? Are we going by categories? Are you leading me by neighborhood? What's going on?
So I think we're going to do categories here. We're going to start with food because
Sure.
I love
You
food.
got to have the comida.
We're gonna talk a bit about museums.
Oh, Los Museos.
See, and then go into some various things to do while you're in Mexico City that might not be that are not like the wrestling.
Just
or something.
random cosas.
Is that things?
That's things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you been doing Duolingo over there?
No, I haven't done Duolingo, but I took far too many years of Spanish, like far more than fits my actual ability to speak Spanish.
Right.
And I have retained a lot of the vocabulary, but the conjugation is muy malo.
Muy mal. Yeah.
Yeah.
The tenses it's complicated.
Muy mal?
Muy mal. It's very bad. Yeah.
Let's see. I think you can do malo too. Pretty sure.
Probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's a recalculating to come back to.
Thrilling.
All right, so
Thrilling recalculating.
Let's jump right into the food section. I know. Listen, if anyone's following Ryan on Instagram, and I recommend it at Ryan New York, you will know that this boy eats in Mexico City.
It's true. It's true. So Mexico City has an amazing street food scene, and I think that both of us would recommend that folks when they're walking around Mexico City should eat the tacos, should have some tamales, should really tortas, especially good at night. Should partake in that, and that's sort of all over the city, and something that is to be embraced. I'm going to talk about 4 restaurants though that are not. The most famous restaurant in Mexico City for the last 10, 15 years has been Pujol, which is a fantastic fine dining experience and is something that everybody should do once in their life. But
Also, impossible to get into.
Very hard. To get into.
Very hard. I think even all of our tips about how to get into the restaurants you want, I'm not sure you could charm your way into Pujol.
No, I think you'd have to be pretty charming to do that. But these 4 are easy to get into, though I would recommend for all 4 to get some reservations, and there's an episode for that. You can learn how to do that.
Yeah, what did episode 3 or 4 way back there?
Way back there.
And a lot
So-
of it has to do with being charming, if I recall correctly. And most of our listeners are renowned goblins, so they're not going to be able to rely on that for these.
No, no. This is these are, and we'll put links in the show notes to get you reservations for these. So I want to start with a really interesting place called Masala Maze. And they advertise themselves as being sort of at the intersection of Mexico and India, which sounds sort of unusual, right? Like, I've described them as fusion before, and then I noticed that they say very explicitly that they are not fusion. I don't quite know the difference between being a fusion and an intersection, but let's just say, they have a rich tradition of both Indian and Mexican food.
But they are not fusion.
It is definitely not fusion.
No.
Don't
No.
call it that.
So-
If you're
so-
listening right now,
Yeah. So
folks
it's like a taco, and then directly next to it is paneer, but they do not
They-
fuse
well,
whatsoever.
they're all on one plate, so
Sure. Sure.
So what you've got, you have, and the menu changes often, but they have a breakfast, sort of brunchy, and then a lunch setting. So there's two settings. They are not open for dinner, but all the meals are inspired by a sort of a combination between the two chefs. One who's an Indian American who has moved to Mexico, and then one who's a chef from Mexico. And so the flavors are really interesting. You've got this sort of like these Indian spices and what would look to be more sort of like traditional sort of Mexican food.
Mhm.
And it's incredibly, the plating is really beautiful. And the entire restaurant is one long communal table that stretches from the front of the restaurant all the way to the back. And they have fantastic natural wines. And it's just like a really fun place to go have brunch. It's so vibrant. All the food they put in front of you is colorful, and it smells amazing, and it is unlike, the flavors are going to really sort of surprise you. It's not something that you've had a million times before, and I think it's a really exciting place.
Would you say that it tips more towards Mexican or more towards Indian?
It doesn't, because of the way that the food is spiced, it doesn't taste like Mexican food. It definitely has more of like an Indian spice to it.
Yeah.
But it often will be sort of like dishes that you would be seeing in a nice Mexican restaurant. But it's hard to say if it tips. It's that intersection. It's
But not fusion.
not fusion.
It's an intersection. It's a conglomeration, but it is not a fusion.
It is not a fusion
Well,
place.
I'm glad that made this list because I have not been there, but I do remember that I sent you the review that sent you here.
It is true. You read the New York Times review, and you got me there. Got me there first. And I've been a couple times. I actually took one of my friends from New York on my most recent trip, and he was really blown away. So definitely check out this place if you're in Mexico City. Masala Maze, highly recommended. So the next restaurant on my list is a fancier option. It's called Rosetta.
Like the stone.
Exactly, like the stone, and it's founded by this chef named Elena Regadas, and it's in this beautiful mansion in Roma, one of the neighborhoods in Mexico City. And when you go in, you feel like you're eating at someone's house. It's got a very homey, welcoming atmosphere. There's plants everywhere. The cuisine is sort of Italian inspired, but it's seasonal, so it does change really often. But I've never had a bad meal there. And it's just really like a beautifully sort of showy but comfortable place to have dinner. And a lot of Mexico City, even in the nicer restaurants, there's more relaxed atmosphere than there is in like a city like New York, where it has like sort of the nicer places of very Wall Streety. You don't have that in Mexico City. People are a little more relaxed. They eat a little later. It's just it's got a nicer sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, and one story I like about them, I've read about this restaurant, and they actually have an in-house bakery for their bread. And it's so good that they've actually started to send the breads from inside Rosetta out to other restaurants in the area. So it's become like this side business.
Right, and they've also opened up their own bakery that's very close by to Rosetta too. And
Panaderia Rosetta.
exactly, and she's opened up another restaurant called Lardo, which is a lunch place, which has a very different vibe than Rosetta. but it's also great. So I would say this would be if I was planning my Mexico City trip and I wanted to have like a meal to kind of cap it all off.
Mhm.
This would be sort of that slot for me. I think it's incredibly beautiful, and it is going to be one of the more relaxing, terrific dining experiences you're going to have in the city.
And it's mostly pastas? Is that I mean, it's Italian fare?
It is Italian, but it's not mostly pastas. There's usually like a fish, a couple meats, but it isn't heavily pasta. There's some pasta on the menu for sure, but it's mostly sort of like Italian inspired dishes. I wouldn't say that it's pasta heavy.
Cool.
This is not where you want to go if you want an all you can eat pasta platter. It's a much more it's a different atmosphere than that.
Well, I wasn't asking that.
So the next restaurant on my list, I love because they have such a fantastic natural wine menu, and
You and these natural
I
wines.
am obsessed with natural wine.
I know. What is a natural wine exactly? I like wine, but I don't. You've referenced natural wines to me like 100 times, and I just kind of nod,
Yeah.
going, "Oh yeah, yeah, natural wine, sure."
It's wine where you're drinking the grape, and there's not a lot of additive, not a lot of colors added, as opposed to sort of more traditional wine where they can sort of fiddle with the what's in the wine to get the kind of color or taste that you're looking for. So natural wine tends to be a little funky in a way that can be really off-putting if you're not used to it. But
Okay.
if you're into it, it's pretty much you find it really hard to drink wine that isn't natural after a while. So it has to do with how it's made and that there's no additives, and it's not quote unquote organic, although there is organic natural wine. But it is the way that it is grown and made is closer to what it was probably back in the day.
I'll tell you, when I'm out on Wow Air and Spirit Air, they're not selling these natural wines that you're describing.
It's pretty tough to find natural wines in Manhattan. So I can't imagine that Boston's caught on yet.
Okay, so
Um,
you were out in Mexico City, you were looking for natural wines, and you came upon.
So I actually found Amaya, this restaurant, my third restaurant on the list, because my friend Diego, who lives in Mexico City and who is a theater director, actually we're going to talk about him a little later on, recommended it because it's his friend's restaurant and I'd never been. And I went, and it's a sort of a casual dinner spot, and it's got a beautiful mural inside, and it's sort of very lively. Everyone's sitting up talking, and they've got this connection to this fantastic natural wine company called Beachy Wines. In
That's
fact,
Bichi.
exactly, yeah, Bichi, and it's actually the woman who owns Amaya. It's her husband's wine company. So it's sort of like the in-house brand. So they've got really fantastic Beachy wines, and I'm a Beachy wine fan, and I can buy some in New York, but you only have a handful of bottles available here. It's hard to find. So when I go to Mexico City, I generally sit up at the bar, and I'll eat here alone because I want to spend some time reading, drinking the wines, and eating the food. I mean, it's a really fantastic, fun place to spend time.
And what's the vibe? What's it look like?
It's a little it's definitely very hip. It's
Yeah.
full of like 20, 30 somethings. More and more there's been more tourists there as it's gotten a lot more notoriety sort of outside of Mexico City. But there's a lot of high chairs, high tables. It's very dynamic, exciting, sort of energetic place. There's a big mural on the wall that sort of can change occasionally, and it's just super friendly. I mean, and the food is dense and rich, but fantastic. I never leave a Maya not as full as possible. And the menu, again, like many of these menus in Mexico City, uses a lot of fresh ingredients, so it changes constantly. But it is definitely a place that I would recommend for a dinner, and you will not be disappointed with the wine selections. You got to try some of that beachy wine.
And interestingly, if you want the beachy wine, but you can't get into the restaurant, they have a small bar that you can also go to. It's called Letiche Nomu Desu, which we will also link to in the show notes. And so that's why if you just want to try the wine and not commit to the whole meal, that'd be another great place to go.
I've never been there. I'm gonna have to put that on my list.
I'm
Um,
always why am I always adding to your Mexico City list?
you're the best.
At some point, you're going to take me with you, I hope.
I hope so too. And another place that's not on this list that has a great selection of Mexican natural wines is called Loop Bar, and we're linked to them in the show notes as well. So the next place that I'm going to talk about, it's the most casual of all the places, but it's sometimes the most difficult place to get in. It's called Paramo, and it is on sort of up this steep and narrow staircase, and into this sort of taco heaven.
How high is the staircase?
It's it's Mexico, so the building rules are a little different. It is more narrow than you could get away with in New York.
Sure.
You go up to this second floor.
So that's to say a lot of Americans not making it up that
No,
stairway.
no. You go up this staircase. It's a little dimly lit. Everybody's sort of packed in tight together, eating these fantastic tacos made of things like pork cheek and all sorts of, they have the traditional stuff, but they also have like a menu of some really fun sort of tacos. You can push your taco knowledge to the brink, and they have great cocktails. So this is where I go if I'm looking just to like have a cool, relaxing dinner with some friends that doesn't involve, any kind of stuffiness whatsoever. Now, one of the things I want to flag here is it's very difficult to get reservations, but for whatever reason, if you message them on Facebook, that has been the only way I've succeeded. So totally worth it. It will be a cheap, delicious, very traditional Mexican meal with great cocktails. And if you don't mind like a loud, buzzy, exciting environment, I think this place is one to check out.
Do you get mezcal when you go to these places? Are you a mezcal drinker?
I've done gosh, I'll tell you a quick story. So I was supposed to go to dinner with my friend Chase, and Tom and I were all in Mexico City together.
Mhm.
And Tom and I decided to go on an afternoon mezcal tasting. So it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't have dinner reservations. We're going to Pajol at 9 o'clock. Okay.
Oh, the really hard to get into
The
one.
toughest spot we've never been. This is like the reason for the trip.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So Tom and I, 3 o'clock, we head over to this mezcal tasting. We're thinking like we're gonna have a couple mezcals. It'll be great. Go take a nap. It'll be awesome.
I feel like I already know how it's going.
Tom and I drink some mezcal. Let me tell you, they are generous pourers at this mezcal tasting.
Yeah.
And we get back to their respective different hotels by around 7,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't wake up until the middle of the night.
Oh my God.
Both of us overslept and missed our Pajol reservations.
Oh my
My
God.
poor friend Chase is there at Pajol. He can't get a hold of us. He's thinking the worst. It's been hours and hours. He's looking at our online status on Facebook. He sees neither of us have been online for hours and hours. He's like, maybe I could see one of you flaking, but both of you flaking.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So we ruined his meal at Pajol. And, I woke up in the middle of the night totally disoriented, like, what is happening? And I realized that it's been 6 hours since it was
Because
horrifying.
even the lower proof mezcals are still very powerful.
Yeah, and I don't think we had eaten much that day because we were having this big dinner
Oh,
at
yeah.
night.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was everything about it was just stupid. It was just poor planning. And thankfully I got to go to Pajot at a different time. But I do. It is. I felt really bad when I woke up that morning, that night. And B, I felt really bad for my friend that I had abandoned and left at this fancy restaurant by himself.
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did fine.
He did fine. Yeah. So the answer is I don't drink that much mezcal because I'll stick to the wine.
Well, anyway, if you do want some mezcal, you can go to Paramo.
Yes, they have great mezcal cocktails for sure. All right, for the next section, I want to talk about 4 museums that I love. So the first museum I want to talk about is actually dedicated to a single Diego Rivera mural. Museo Mural Diego Rivera, easy to remember. And it's dedicated to this huge mural that he painted of a park near his home in Coyoacan with all these different figures from Mexico City history. And what happened was during the earthquake back in the 80s, this mural was in a place that became unstable, and they actually had to lift it and move it to this new venue and then build this sort of museum around it. So when you go into the museum, which is located sort of pretty much in center Mexico.
Yeah, it's sort of the historic center of Mexico City.
Yeah, exactly. When you go to this museum, there's always sort of like a floating exhibit that's there in sort of the main section. But then when you take a right, you see this extraordinary mural.
And Ryan, the name of the mural is, and I have been to this museum, one of the few things on this list I've actually seen. It's called Sueño de una tarde dominical, en la Alameda Central.
And this means sort of Sunday in the park,
Right.
right? I mean,
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
yeah, yeah. So it was in this hotel called the Hotel de Prado, and which was severely damaged in this earthquake in 1985. And so they had to transport this mural, which weighs tons. And you actually can see pictures of this happening when you're in the museum on the right hand side of them transporting incredibly carefully this this mural, this priceless mural from one sort of demolished building into what will become this new museum. Um, so it's a quick visit. It's very central, so it's easy to get to. And you walk in and there's always some kind of floating exhibit. But then you take a right and you're into like sort of the main room where they've got this terrific mural, and there are hundreds of characters from Mexico history in the mural, and there are plenty of little guides to help you figure out who everybody is. But you can find Diego, you can find Frida. It's a really stunning, and there's not usually very many people there since it's a small museum, so you kind of can spend as much time as you want getting to see the piece.
Yeah, and it's great for kind of a history lesson of Mexico City, and it's also quite funny. Like, there's great guides there that sort of show you and tell you the individual significance and stories of all the people that are pictured. And the name of it means "dream of a Sunday afternoon" in the Alameda Central, and that's exactly what it is. It's sort of this dreamscape of historical figures, and I remember very prominently a Day of the Dead figure on there with a big feathered hat, and I remember finding that very charming.
Yes, there's a couple of those. Yeah, you'll recognize some of the figures, and often you have to refer to the guide, but you can spend a lot of time because it is very large. And if you start from the left and walk all the way to the right, there are a lot of little interactions happening. In fact, in this mural, Diego painted himself as a child,
Mm.
and you have to find him. So that's sort of a fun thing.
But it is classic Frida. You'll be able to pick out Frida without needing the guide.
Yeah, and she's right center there, and then you can find little Diego looking up at his future wife. It's very cute.
I wonder if the guide has a separate listing for her unibrow.
I don't know. I think it's pretty iconic. It's good personal branding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been trying to grow one myself for
Yeah.
quite a long time.
If she had got that threaded, I don't think she'd be where she is today. So if you're looking for a more traditional museum, head over to Polanco, sort of the Soho or the Beverly Hills of Mexico City. Great museum called the Soumaya Museum, which just opened in this extraordinary building it's like futuristic. It's hard to explain, but it is just this incredibly big silver. I don't even know what the shape of it is. Like it's like a triangle that bends.
Yeah,
It's,
it almost it's sort of Salvador Dali looking. It's got big curves. It almost becomes what do they call those things? The hourglass. It almost looks
yeah.
like an hourglass, but it doesn't quite deliver on the bottom.
It has a nice figure, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw this building walking down the street, I'd give a second look.
Yeah, it's really stunning from the outside. It was built in 2011, founded by Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim,
Mm.
who owns quite a few things in Mexico.
Yes.
And it has, inside this incredible building, it has a massive collection of, art from all over the world, not just Mexican art, but a ton of European art as well. And then the top floor is this indoor sculpture garden, but it has all this natural light pouring through because you're on the top floor of the building, and it's really striking. And it's kind of cool to see it in this sort of like pseudo open air atmosphere, but be very inside. And so everything about the museum is clean and like, but it's just super modern and interesting in its feel. So it's definitely one to check out, and it is always free, which is
Wow.
really fantastic.
Well, that's what you get when a millionaire builds it for. Actually, he's probably a billionaire, right?
He's
Billionaire?
definitely a billionaire. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
All right.
Yeah.
And this
yeah.
museum was it's named after his deceased wife.
Yes,
Sumaya.
his wife passed away, and he named the museum in her honor.
I always thought Carlos Slim was a pretty. It sounded like a movie name.
It's a super cool name.
Yeah, it's a really
there's
good
no
name.
doubt. Yeah, yeah, and he's worth $59.2 billion. So a solid billionaire.
Absolutely. I think at one time, I believe at one time he was the richest man in the world.
Yeah, he was for a while. He would mock Trump about how Trump wasn't an actual billionaire.
Boy,
which is funny.
Yeah, it used to be funny.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, he's the largest shareholder of the New York Times. So who knew?
Well, and we're such big fans.
Right.
Am I incorrect that this one is a little hard to get to? It's like a bit of a cab ride.
Well, it's in Polanco, and once you're in Polanco, you can walk around and you can do shopping. I mean, it's like shopping in Beverly Hills or Soho. It's very upscale. A lot of this is actually near an incredibly fancy mall. Malls are still a big thing in Mexico City, so it might be a little hard to get to, but once you're there, there's a whole lot to explore around it. So it's worth the trip. So the next two museums I want to talk about are both in the same park, Chapultepec Park.
That's like huge. It's like the size of Central Park, right?
It's
huge.
It's massive. I've spent an entire day there. You can go paddling. You can like eat. You can walk around for hours. It never ends, really.
And if you get stuck in the middle and you don't know which direction you're supposed to be heading out, it's a big problem. I've had that happen.
Yeah, definitely, because you can't. There's not as many exits as there is. Central Park, you can just sort of leave anywhere you go. This park, there's a lot of fencing, so it's not as
right.
You can get caught. So yeah, that is something to look out for. But there are several museums in the space. The Modern Art Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, and Chapultepec Castle are the two that I want to call out. The Museum of Modern Art has a ton of really fantastic Mexican painters that I hadn't really heard of before. A lot of modern art. When you go to MoMA, you see a lot of European, a lot of American modern artists. There are floors dedicated to some really beautiful, interesting, fantastic stuff that you will be Googling and reading about because it is striking. And they have one of my favorite Frida paintings there called The Two Fridas, and we'll link to it. But if you've seen any Frida painting, it's probably this one. It's one of the most famous, one of the most famous Frida paintings out there. It's a phenomenally powerful, interesting piece with sort of the duality of Frida.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't this the one where she looks like she's cut out her own heart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a big fan of like cutting out different parts of her body. She struggled with her health her whole life. So her body was always something that she was examining,
fighting against.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she had a lot of thoughts, plus the miscarriage. There's a lot of that imagery in her paintings as well. But this is I think it's the best piece of Frida's art in the whole city. And there's four big sections in the museum. When you get to the fourth section, that's where you've got all your sort of the Diego Riveras and the Fridas and stuff you're going to start to recognize. But a really interesting collection. And then outdoors, there's a fun sculpture garden too. So make sure you check that out. So when you leave the Museum of Modern Art, you're going to go up a hill up Chapultepec Hill to Chapultepec Castle, which I believe is like one of the only places that European royalty ever lived in the Americas.
It is the only royal castle in all the Americas.
That's pretty awesome.
Yes, this is one I also did visit, and I remember that climb up the hill, very steep.
Oh, you will remember it.
Yeah.
Your legs. We're talking about a day. If you go to these two museums and you're walking around the park, you've got your 10,000 steps.
Yeah,
in.
You'll have earned your mezcal, and do not have it before you go, or else you're not making it.
Well, so this, it was used as an actual castle for Maximilian the First. Famous guy, basically Napoleon.
No, who was that? I have no idea who that was.
He was an emperor. He was like an important guy. He lived there for a while during the Second Mexican Empire. Don't even get me started on Mexican history. I don't know anything. It's embarrassing.
But you know that there were two empires.
I do know that. I mean, I've read. Because I've been to this castle, I did a little bit of research here. But it is a really striking building. There's a ton of classic Mexican art, and it also gives you one of the best views of the city. So it's a really incredible sort of place to stand on top of this hill. Imagine that you're Maximilian the First. And sort of looking out on your empire.
Looking out on your empire.
Your
second empire.
Yeah, he was killed. He didn't live there very long before he was killed. So maybe don't imagine too much that you're Maximilian the First. But so that is
And I remember this museum is much more. It walks you through really the history of Mexico,
Yes, it does.
more than any of the others. It's less about sort of the art and more about the history.
Yeah, it is history heavy, but it's not like it's not dry. I mean, there's a lot to look at. It's not a lot of dry history. The palace like has a lot of dry historical exhibits. This castle does not have any of that. I mean, it's exciting. It's visual. It does a lot of fantastic sort of art and historical stuff to look at. So it's definitely something that you should check out. And I think if you did both the Museum of Modern Art. And the castle in one day, you would have a very solid museum day.
And wear comfortable shoes.
Always.
Well, not always. If you're going out to any of those sexy Soho restaurants you're talking about, I don't know. You don't want to be in comfortable shoes there.
No. So this last section, I want to talk about some things to do in Mexico City that are not museums and that are not restaurants. If you can pull yourself away from those, the first is one of the weirdest things that I've done. It is there's a neighborhood in Mexico City called Xochimilco. Did I do that right?
Yeah, Xochimilco.
Yeah. And these are these canals that run in Mexico City, where you get in these incredibly colorful party boats, and you pay a guy per hour, and they're pretty big boats, and they have like speakers, and it's like a whole thing, and you sort of push off down this canal. Bring up friends. You can bring drinks. You can bring snacks. You can really enjoy yourself on an afternoon. It's quite an experience. So there's going to be a lot of music, a lot of people. It's really crowded if you go on like the weekends. In fact, I would recommend trying to go on a sort of an off day so you can have a little bit of like calmness. Otherwise, it's pretty much boat.
Are there musicians on the boats?
There are musicians on the boats. There are musicians that will jump on your boat and try to like force mariachi you. So you've got to be careful there.
Okay.
So there are definitely musicians on the boat and musicians all around. There's a lot, but this is not. There's some tourists, but this is something that a lot of like young people from Mexico City will go and do because it's something cheap. They can bring a case of beer and just kind of hang out with their friends. So you'll see a lot of people just sort of partying on these boats. When we went with a group of friends who were in Mexico City and a group of friends who were traveling. So we had about 10 people on the boat, and you could have fit another 10 easily without it getting even crowded. So it was a really fun afternoon, and we got a good nap in afterwards.
It sounds pretty raucous. This isn't sort of Venice.
It is not Venice at all. I'm trying to get that. It's louder and although Venice is pretty crowded these days.
Sure, but it's meant to be party specific. It's uproarious.
You're not. Yeah, you don't want to go to like sit and quietly read poetry unless
Sure.
you want to read poetry in the middle of a party.
You've obviously seen me at parties.
So, but it is a little out of the way. So this is a pretty long taxi ride. But when you get there, don't fret if you don't have beer or anything. You can before you get to the boats. There are a ton of little stores selling everything you could possibly need to take on these boats with you. We had a ball, and it's just you're going to spend a few hours. You're going to have some beers, and they take you kind of down this canal, and you see weird things like there's this island of all these dead baby dolls.
Huh.
That is inexplicable, but it's like a thing that people go see. It's very strange.
I'll say it. I've said it once. I'll say it again. Mexicans love death.
It does have like a bit of a Day of the Dead feel.
Yeah,
with all
I
these
love
dead,
that.
I said dead baby dolls, but I guess baby
You
dolls
did say
are
that.
always.
No, they're baby dolls. They're dolls showing. They're representing dead babies.
Are they? Yes.
Well, I was assuming. So really, it's just baby dolls. It's an island of baby dolls.
Yeah, but they're hanging and stuff, so it doesn't look like they're healthy, happy baby dolls. It's disturbing baby dolls.
Okay. So if you're into disturbing baby dolls, why don't you grab a case of cerveza and head on down to Xochimilco?
Yeah, if you stumbled onto this thing in like your local woods, you would call the police because you would be very frightened. So that is fun. And then after you finish your day out on the canal, there's nothing you and I like doing more, Kieran, than spending a night at the theater.
You got to take in the theater.
Even
if you don't speak the language.
Even if you don't speak the language. And they always have shows playing in Mexico City that you know well enough that you can see, without having to know the language. So if you've seen The Lion King, if you've seen Cats, You know, these
Is it
I've
called
played.
cats down there, or is it called gatos?
It's not called Gatos, although it's
Wow.
El Leon Rey is the Lion King, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I have actually seen quite a few shows in Mexico City. I'm going to go through some of the ones that I've seen. I saw a fantastic production of Rent, directed by my buddy Diego. I was mentioning earlier. There's a production of Les Mis that's actually playing right now. That
I
is
feel. Do they sing it in? Is it all in Spanish?
all in Spanish. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I have to think that song, 1,000.
yeah.
I don't know the number. I don't like Ren. But in Spanish, that's a lot. That's harder to say. It's many more numbers and
Yeah, but
syllables.
and I just watched Rent live this week.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And one of the things you notice when you've seen Rent as much as I have is that some of the lyrics are not great. So maybe not understanding them makes them even more beautiful.
It's a little better.
Yeah, it's a little better. Les Mis actually sounds fantastic in Spanish. I mean, possibly because many of the songs were written originally in French, right? But it sounds fantastic. And the Les Mis is actually in one of these theaters that is the size of a Broadway theater. It's actually in Polanco, so you could do one of those museums we talked about earlier, and then go see Les Mis in the evening. In some of these sort of fancier theaters, when you order your intermission drink, they bring it to you at intermission. They bring it to your seat, which is just for somebody like me who just doesn't want to get up. That is the height of decadence. I'm like, whoa, my intermission drink is coming to me.
So you'll sleep through your Peugeot reservation. So you'll sleep through your Peugeot reservation, but somebody brings a drink to your seat and you're over the moon.
And I saw a production of Grease, or as they say they call it in Mexico, Vaselina, but with a V, so it looks like Vaseline, which is
Vaseline the musical.
yeah, the least sexy thing. I tried to explain to someone like, no, Grease is cool. It's like what you put in your hair in the 50s to get it look all crazy. Vaseline is not cool.
They're like, yeah, it's what you put on chapped skin after you've been outside too long.
Yeah, not cool. The production was good though. Saw a production of The Glass Menagerie. Also has a great title in Spanish.
El Zoológico de Cristal.
And that's so cool.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It sounds nicer than The Glass Menagerie.
It does. I totally agree. And then there's been this musical that I'm going to describe it as sort of the Mamma Mia of Mexico City. It's a 2009 Mexican jukebox musical based on all these popular songs from the 80s that I don't know because I don't know any Latin pop. But everyone in the audience knew every single word and was overwhelmed with joy every time a song started. And it's called Mentiras, or Lies, the musical. And it's about a man who marries or is in a relationship with, hard for me to follow because it's all in Spanish, 4 women. And he gets so out of control he has to fake his own death.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of lies. Now it takes a turn, but it is really fun and it's been playing for a decade. I would definitely recommend that. And one of the interesting things about the theater in Mexico is that people eat popcorn at the theater. Something I have never seen in all my theater going, but it seems like it's a regular. You go see a production of Billy Elliot. Everybody's got a big tub of popcorn.
Wait, have you seen Billy Elliot?
I did. I saw a production of Billy Elliot in Mexico City, and it was fantastic. It was on the exact same set they used on the national tour, so it looked great. The kids were awesome, and Billy Elliot again has that problem of the lyrics not being very good. Doesn't have that if you don't understand the lyrics. The one moment that didn't get a lot of reaction was the Maggie Thatcher thing, which goes over gangbusters on Broadway or in London.
Yeah, right.
People are like, what, who? Why do we care about Maggie Thatcher? Yeah.
By the way, on the popcorn point, popcorn is one of my favorite words in Spanish because they call it palomitas, and palomitas means little pigeons or little doves, and it's because the popcorn looks like a little dove.
Does it look like a little dove?
Well, I guess to Spanish speakers it does because they call it palomitas, which means little pigeon.
Well, next time I go to see a show in Mexico City, I'm going to be like, no palomitas, por favor.
Why? Because you don't think it looks like it? You don't want to eat it? That doesn't make any sense.
I don't want to eat popcorn at the theater.
As I said, this is just a little bit of my expansive vocabulary that I just can't conjugate around. So, I'll just point and say, small pigeons, please. You know what I wish they served? My favorite word in Spanish, albóndigas.
What is that?
An albóndiga is a meatball.
Oh, believe it or not.
Delicious.
That would be even weirder if they served meatballs. That would be even weirder
Yeah.
than the popcorn. At least the popcorn, makes sense in the theater.
I want to go to Billy Elliot. I want them to be speaking Spanish with Irish accents, and I want a big albondiga in my lap.
Yeah. There's no connection between Billy Elliot and Ireland. Wouldn't you know? It takes place in the UK entirely. No Irish connection there.
Oh,
I
is
promise.
that right?
Yeah. I don't
Do
know
they
either.
speak with a British accent?
No, they don't speak with a British accent. It's all in Spanish, and I listened for that.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
Cockney, but
Right.
it doesn't really come in.
Funny.
No.
Yeah.
No.
God, why did I think that was Irish? But of course, you're right. Yeah.
And just one quick theater recommendation. My friend Diego, who directed Rent and The Glass Menagerie in Mexico City, has a new production of Next to Normal, the first Spanish language production of Next to Normal. It looks amazing. I'm going to go check it out in March, hopefully. So I'm excited about that. So if you go in the next couple months, do check that out because it's going to be a fabulous production. He's a great director.
That sounds awesome.
So I want you to practice your Spanish, Kieran, because you need it. And I want you to pronounce the next item on my list because that second word is a difficult one. The first one is biblioteca, which is a word that I learned in 3rd grade and I will never forget.
That's
because
right.
It's a fantastic word.
Sure, and this is actually one of the other ones that I have been to happily. This is a library you recommend us going to. It's called the Biblioteca Vasconcelos.
Biblioteca Vasconcelos.
Vasconcelos.
Vasconcelos. This is a really this is part of UNAM, which is this massive university in Mexico City, and it is a massive library where you walk in and it's like the books are floating around you, and it's sort of hard to explain without seeing it.
Yeah, they call them flying bookcases.
Right.
And basically, you walk in, and there's 3 or 4 stories above you, and the lobby sort of looks out on all of these bookcases that look as if they're suspended from the ceiling.
Right. Exactly. It feels a little bit magical. You haven't kind of the light comes through all the books, and it's sort of just. It does have the appearance that you're sort of floating around all these books. Now, it's a really fantastic. Like the architecture is fascinating, but apparently when it was built, it wasn't built to the standard that they needed. So it's had to close several times for massive renovations due to construction defects.
Oh God!
But it's open now, and it is it seems totally grounded.
So you're looking up at these flying books,
and they come right at you.
They could come crashing down on you.
That's part of the excitement, yeah, of the library. But it's a really interesting place to go. Definitely take a car though, because it is in a neighborhood that you're not going to want to walk around in too much afterwards. It's not very walkable. Just a lot of traffic but definitely jump in a car. You'll be right there, and it's a really beautiful, interesting place, and you get some pictures of flying books around you. Hopefully not.
If I
actually flying.
recall correctly, you are not technically allowed to take pictures in there, but you can sneak a few.
When I was there, everyone was just taking pictures the whole time.
I remember there was some dirty looks from the security guards if you did that, and also. There is a cool piece of art right in the middle too that looks like a hanging whale skeleton.
Yes. How could I forget the whale skeleton? I only actually saw it from above because there's multiple floors, so we kind of were walking around. But I did see the whale. It's down there.
It's hanging, and you can walk below it and see it from above as well.
Yeah. So see it from every angle in this kind of weird, fantastic library. Don't get caught taking pictures, but. I'm going to post a great picture.
Take some pictures, yeah.
Take some pictures. I have a great picture of me. I'll put on the Instagram standing amongst the floating books that I really love.
All right. Well, I think we are coming down to the last pick.
The last pick. And Kieran, I know you're going to have a lot to add to this. I want to talk about gay parties in Mexico City. Mexico City is a great town to go out in. The gay district is called Zona Rosa. In Zona Rosa, you're going to find the road that has sort of all these gay bars on it. The main one that is sort of the most tourist friendly is a place called Kinky Bar. But don't worry, there's nothing kinky about it. It's just a pretty traditional big dance club. They've got music, live performances. They've got a karaoke room. They've just got a lot going on there. I spend a lot of time in the karaoke room.
Sure.
Um,
What do
it's
what do you sing?
usually the Beatles because that's like a crowd pleaser.
And
You
is
know?
it but in English?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay,
don't.
sure.
Yeah. Oh my god, can you imagine if I sang in Spanish? That'd be horrifying.
I can, and I don't like what I hear.
No, no. Um, but this is a great evening. You can start at some of the smaller bars around, and then you can sort of end up at Kinky Bar. You have a really good time, and that is like a Zona Rosa evening. On Friday nights, there's a party that I love in Polanco. This is near Les Mis and near where Somaya Museum is. And that's a club called Envy, and that's on Friday nights. And that's a very sort of like New York City Soho sort of fancier club with like bottle service and all that jazz. But it is sort of the Mexico City version of that.
Mm.
So it's friendlier and livelier and happier than New York. Um, and this is the one place where the one thing I don't like about Envy is that for whatever reason, even though it's illegal, everybody smokes cigarettes there, and it's just like a thing that happens. You don't see that actually in any of these other clubs, which is unusual.
Weird, yeah.
And then if you want to be adventurous, there are a couple bars in Centro.
Describe
one-
adventurous. What are we adventuring into?
So I mean, it's sort of like East Village-y. It's a little dingier, it's a little rougher. You're not going to order a cocktail, okay?
Sure,
You're going to order a 10 peso beer, and you're going to be happy with whatever they give you. And one of these is called Primicia, and it's got a lot of Catholic imagery in it, so it would appeal to you.
I'm in.
That.
I'm in.
Yeah. You've got Mary everywhere. You got Jesus. You've got, it's got a lot going on.
Oh, that's two of the heavy hitters in the Catholic
Two of the
Church
big ones.
right
Two
there,
of the big. Mary was the original influencer. The
Oh,
Pope told
okay.
me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Pope
Yeah.
Francis was just, he's just trying to be in touch with the millennials. We don't have to mock
Hello?
him for saying that.
Hello, fellow kids. So I will list some of these bars in the show notes. But definitely Zona Rosa. If you have one night out on the town, that is the one that I would recommend because it's super compact. It's sort of like Hell's Kitchen in New York or West Hollywood, where you've just got one street with like 20 different bars on it. You can go explore. Kinky being one of my favorites. There's a cool bar called Baby, another one called Rico. I mean, it's a really kind of lively, wild crowd. And you're gonna have a really good time. And people are nice. It's not like New York where it's very cliquey. People talk, and it's a much kind of a more open, kind of friendlier atmosphere.
That sounds great. Well, Ryan, that has been a wonderful walk around Mexico City. You brought us to museums. You brought us to great food, great drink. We've been on party boats where we're going and listening to Billy Elliot in Spanish. We're eating little pigeons, and then we're ending up at a gay club. I mean, that is my experience of being in cities with you right there.
Well, thank you.
I think with that, it's probably time to head to the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Well, here we are. It is the last stop. It is my favorite part of the podcast, and it's also our good friend Matt Levine's favorite part of the podcast as well.
Oh, our favorite emailer, Matt Levine. Now, this is probably Matt Levine's first episode, given that he thought we were a podcast about the British office. So, Matt, this is the stop, the last stop, where Ryan and I each talk about one thing that we've read or experienced or traveled to or smelt or tasted or cooked, something that fed our wanderlust, that desire to travel, and kept that spirit of wonder alive during our workaday lives. So, Ryan, I'm gonna turn to you, Matt. We do this every week. Matt, I'm gonna turn to Ryan. I'm gonna say, Ryan, do you have a last stop this week?
Yeah, I do have a last stop this week. You know what? It's inspired by Chris Finch, a character on The Office.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm talking about this British family that spent a month terrorizing the good people of New Zealand. Have you heard about this?
I think I saw a headline about it, but I don't really know the story.
Well, a family of anywhere between 12 and 15 people. So we're talking about a big family.
Is it an extended family, or are those all children?
I would imagine that is an extended family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's not a ton known about all the family members. The only ones that we know their names are the ones that have been arrested. But these folks spent a good month terrorizing New Zealand, going around, leaving trash everywhere, dining and dashing. There was a scene at a local store where Two of the children walked in and just stole a Christmas tree. They just picked up the Christmas tree and just walked out with it. And then they returned a week later and tried to steal more things. And that's
Oh,
when one of them got arrested. They went to the same restaurant more than once with this massive family and ate. And then at the very end of the meal, said that there was a fly in their soup and refused to pay for the entire bill for
oh,
all 15 people. And they
wow.
did this more than once.
At the same
And
restaurant?
at the same restaurant, absolutely. And this is crazy because New Zealand's like not a very big country, so they became this sort of social media sensation where people are like tracking these terrible people around the country. And the father in the group, or the grandfather, we don't really know, even dyed his hair so he could like not look like the guy that was in a lot of these pictures.
Huh.
Um, and finally, last week, they actually got deported from New Zealand
Wow.
for bad behavior. So I'm
Sent
imagining
back to the UK.
exactly, yeah. People speculated they were Irish for a while. Very offensive to me because I have
Very
Irish
offensive.
roots.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when they were actually deported, one of the major papers in Ireland ran UK family, comma not Irish, deported from New Zealand.
Yeah,
So
that's pretty good. It reminds me of like groups of like British college students that you run into in European towns where they take like Ryanair, they get a cheap flight, and then they just go and get sloshed the whole weekend. And they are like the loudest,
yeah.
awful, and they've got that one British accent, you know, that like that real, it's not quite Cockney, but it's
You
like,
Yeah, you're describing my time in Cardiff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's usually like young, college age, or
Yes,
slightly
yes,
older
it's
men.
not usually
This is the
them
full
and their
family.
families. Yeah, right, right,
Yeah.
right.
There's a video of one of the kids who folks think is about 9 yelling at a woman, "I'm gonna knock your brains out,"
Oh,
before deliberately pouring chips. How did you know they weren't British if they have chips?
it's so vulgar.
Really vulgar, really vulgar. And I've never been to New Zealand, but apparently, looking at this in context, New Zealand is tourism is just exploding in New Zealand, and there's
Mm.
so many people coming, and they're actually kind of trying to figure out how to deal with the influx of visitors.
Well, it sounds
Um,
like they haven't figured it out yet.
well, I think not all families are going to be like the William H Macy family on Shameless. That's going to come to your, mention a TV show and get an email about
Yeah.
that. Matt's like, you didn't even mention the UK version of Shameless.
They should do a crossover with Chris Finch. That'd be a hell of a
Chris
show.
I think Chris Finch would. If I was
Undersung hero.
Look, if I was casting this as some sort of like sitcom where this family travels around New Zealand,
Yeah.
I think the guy who plays Chris Finch would be terrific in it. He brings lots
Yeah,
to the table.
actually, from the description, I think you're right. What now? So you're using this as your last stop, which means in some way this fed your wanderlust.
Well,
Now-
I was just when I first read about it, Kieran, I was so horrified it was going to be an American family.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
when
yeah.
it wasn't, I just felt the need to talk about it. Because
That's true.
it's so rare that we're not the ones misbehaving.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be a brilliant thing if this were a campaign masterminded by New Zealand tourism?
Well, I don't know if that's the kind of tourists they want to attract. Like I said, they have a lot of
yes.
tourists right now.
Yeah, yeah. Fair
Maybe they're
point.
showing people how not to act. Like if you come to New Zealand, you spend a month just stealing and physically abusing, our residents. We will kick you out after a whole month.
Well, that is the Kiwis deserve better.
They do deserve better. I mean, they had Lord of the Rings, shot there. They're used to Ian McKellen, gentleman of class.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now there's a British gent.
Yeah, exactly.
Eh,
But look,
British? Is he British? Did I make that up?
he's definitely British.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to share with you a map that the New Zealand Herald put together of all the various claims against this family, and we'll have to put that in the show notes because I'm not doing it justice because they were causing mayhem like every single day they were there.
Yeah, and maybe we could just go out on. Could you perhaps just do a little bit of the British accent? Find a quote that they yelled at a New Zealander, and just give us a taste of what that must have sounded like.
There's this one time when they were in a campsite
Yeah.
where the man confronted this other resident of the campsite and said, "Do you know who we are?" not really good.
Was that your British accent?
Nah, do you know? Wait, hold on, I gotta think. Like top of the morning to you. No, that's Irish.
No,
like,
that's Irish. No, you
got
gotta
any
go.
change, governor?
Come here, Mary Poppins. Do you know who we are?
Yeah, I gotta pull in my Oliver, my Charlie Bates from when I was a kid. So
Yeah, you got to pick a pocket or two.
yeah. Do you know who we are?
So hold on. So they were aware of their own celebrity on this.
Yeah, I mean, they were all over the local media, and by the end of the trip, in the last week or so, the international media. So I think one of the things, if you go to New Zealand, they've been traumatized. Just be extra nice, extra polite. Don't do what this woman did, which was take pieces of her hair out and put it in the food, and then refuse to pay your $250 bill. That is just not appropriate to do at the restaurant, Mr. India, which I'm sure is a lovely place.
And also, if you do go to New Zealand and you are being an asshole, tell them you're part of the extended British family. Don't put it back on Americans. Let us have this. It's really we have so little these days.
I'll leave you with one more quote. Even the grandmom and the child got involved, saying they wanted to punch my head in.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so it's a whole
You
family
punch your
family
head in.
affair.
Go punch your head in.
You know what? You gotta admire the family stick together though. Family vacation.
That's true. Actually, maybe we're taking the wrong thing from this. Maybe this is a beautiful family togetherness bonding activity.
I can't wait. Maybe this was also maybe they're just filming sort of like a Chevy Chase film in real time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a sort of a Ali G scenario.
Yeah,
we don't know.
We
don't know.
They might be punking New Zealanders.
Exactly.
Oh. Well, we'll follow the story, and if indeed they were punking the New Zealanders, we will recalculate it. Now, Ryan, my last stop this week, a little more traditional of a last stop. Catherine and I went to the MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston, which is a fine museum,
It's
the
a
Fine
lovely
Museum of
museum.
Fine Arts. Beautiful. They've got a great show on, and it's called Ansel Adams in Our Time. Now, do you know who Ansel Adams is?
Yes, a landscape photographer.
Yes, that's right. Beautiful black and white landscapes. A great proponent of the national parks, and the exhibition actually had over 200 photos from national parks all over the U.S. Beautiful, close-up shots of interesting bark patterns and new grass. Beautiful shots of Yosemite and Yellowstone. Some of which, if I threw them up on the Instagram, you'd say I've seen that photo a million times. That's how iconic these things are.
And this is back when the national parks were beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. This was pre-government shutdown. Actually, a really brilliant photographer could go out right now and create a great equivalent of Ansel Adams in our time.
Yeah.
Of just overflowing porta potties and broken Joshua trees. And I will say what it was a huge show. As I said, 200 photos. And I personally like smaller photography shows, maybe 50 or fewer photos, because I feel like then you can really connect with a few pieces. It was a little overwhelming, and it did make me think how spoiled we all are with the nature of photography that we see every day on Instagram.
Right. So you think that we just see so much beauty if you follow good accounts, of course, that it sort of makes this sort of less exciting than it would be if you didn't have that in your life all the time.
Well, I think it's hard for us to conceive how breakthrough these photos were in their time. I mean,
Right.
Ansel Adams was working in the mid 1900s mostly, and so you have some Depression era photos, and further on, I think Ansel Adams died in the 80s, and so these photos were sometimes the first glimpse that Americans were getting of these national lands. And I think today we just, we get to see beautiful pictures. I mean, pictures that would be iconic every single day in our feed. I mean, I've noticed their absence through the government shutdown because the national parks aren't actively posting. But it did make me a bit sad that because these photos are so plentiful, these works of art by Ansel Adams and others, it didn't really maybe make me sit up as much as it would have if I could have experienced them, anew.
Were there any of the photos that you saw that did make you feel that way, though? Was there a particular piece that you were like, "Oh wow, I haven't seen this. This isn't iconic, but it's a beautiful kind of new way to look at something"?
Yeah, so I think the ones that connected with me best were the ones of places that I had visited and that brought kind of a different point of view that I had observed. So the one that stands out in my mind is Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado, and it's a famous national park for having what they call Cliff Palace, and it's these sort of adobe structures that are built in and under a cliff, and they're Native American structures that have been preserved. And, Catherine and I had done a tour where we were actually taken down and got to get up close. But the Ansel Adams shot was from, quite far away across a canyon. And so you could see them kind of in underneath the shadow of the cliff. And that to me, that did make me reflect on it kind of brought me back there, to our visit, but it also showed me the value of taking the far out view as opposed to just the close up tour. And, I'm thinking I might get a print of it because I have a WPA poster of Mesa Verde up on my wall here, and I think that an Ansel Adams compliment would be a great addition.
So, there's a connection between Ansel Adams and one of your favorite presidents.
Theodore Roosevelt?
Well,
FDR. Given
yeah,
yeah, okay, FDR because of the time period, sure.
So early in Ansel's career, he took a bunch of pictures of the Kings Canyon National Park.
Yes, yeah.
And
I saw some of those.
Yeah, that book found its way to Harold Ickes
Uh-huh.
in 1938, and he showed it to President Roosevelt, FDR.
Huh.
And FDR liked it so much, he just took it from him and kept it. And so he, FDR early on was like, "Oh, these photos are really, really special." And obviously, FDR felt a connection to the parks because of his cousin.
Well, fair enough. I mean, Ickes was the head of the Department of Interior, right? So
I believe so.
why,
Yeah.
why did he need this book? He could just go out there anytime he wanted
That's true.
on the government dime,
Yeah,
mind you.
he could just fly out there on a private jet and just enjoy the national park.
So anyway, I really did like the show. I think the best way that I would go back or that I'm going to approach big photography shows like this again is to try to really hone in on a few pieces of work that, like you asked, kind of give me a more emotional resonance that speak to me. And I think that in fact, that one photo of Mesa Verde, that is something that I will walk away and be reflecting on. That really drummed up the wanderlust.
Yeah, and you're going to post that photo in the show notes.
Well, obviously.
Excellent. So, I was actually reading that he went to Yosemite when he was only 14
Uh-huh.
and was totally overwhelmed. And he said, I quote, "I knew my destiny when I first experienced Yosemite."
No, that almost sounds like a song lyric.
He probably, well, he's from San Francisco, so I'm sure he could write a lyric or two, right? I mean, that's something you do if you're from San Fran. So if folks want to check this out who are in the Boston area, how long does the exhibit run?
It runs through February 24th, so there's still plenty of time to go see it. Crowded, though. Oh, boy, crowded. So I would say either sign up for a membership and get in there on a membership day or like a special open time for members or go nice and early.
Nice and early. Well, thank you. I wish I was in Boston to check it out. But I am inspired now because of to check out this book that FDR thought so much of. So I'm gonna definitely do that this weekend. So next week we're gonna put on our design hats and we're gonna design our dream piece of luggage.
All right, Ryan, we are going head to head in a luggage throwdown where we are each going to independently design, draw out, and name all the features of our ideal piece of luggage.
And I think that my luggage is going to be super advanced, really exciting. I'm going to bring a lot of innovation to the table.
No, not me. Not
Yours
me.
is going to be
I
classic, and it's going to be
bare
like wood or
bones.
something.
Yeah, I don't want any wheels. I mean, it's going to be really.
The wheel is one of the great inventions. Okay, the wheel. It always comes back to wheels. That's all I'm saying.
So next week, listen to us go to the luggage challenge, and then We'll each say the actual piece of luggage that's out there on the market that we think is closest to what we've dreamed up.
Yes, which I will probably pretty extravagant because I'm that kind of designer. I shoot for the moon.
I'm always wearing my design hat. That's what this thing is that I have on all the time.
Ooh, you look great in it. I love the purple and the velvet.
Well, that's all part of the design, honey. All right. Well, until then,
I'm Ryan Davis,
and I'm Kieran Schmidt.
and this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.